All right, boss, you're in the driver's seat today. You're driving the bus.
In 3, 2, 1. It's the last week of the NHL regular season. Playoff races are getting sorted out. We're going down to the wire for the Vezina and Jennings trophies. And here at InGoal this week, we've got a newly signed pro and Olympian as our guest and a radical change to some gear. Welcome to the InGoal radio podcast presented by the Hockey Shop Source for Sports and thehockeyshop.com, episode 167. I'm David Hutchison, and I'm here with the one and only Kevin Woodley. Unfortunately, our leader, Darren Millard, is still taking a bit of a cautious return to action after a nasty bike crash. So, Woody, we're really happy to see Darren back on the air, looking like a hockey player who barely missed a shift while out getting stitches. But we got the ball this week. Isn't it great to see Darren back at the mic?
Well, we were talking about end of the season awards, and we'll get into Jennings and Vezina and all that stuff again a little bit as we get down to the final few games of the season. But I know it's just for hockey players, but I would definitely nominate Darren for the Masterton for perseverance and dedication to the game of hockey. The fact he is back on TV doing his work with the Vegas Golden Knights after such a traumatic injury and bad crash and brain injury is remarkable. But it's sort of taken a lot out of him just to be there, and so we're giving him a few more weeks off here so that he can continue to heal and recover. But really, just impressive stuff. Again, we'll let him share all the details when he gets back, but just know that what he's done to battle back to be on the air is really remarkable and should be applauded, frankly. I know we don't get to put a write-in vote to give him the Masterton, but that's just how dedicated and committed he is. He didn't want to miss any time as Vegas fights and claws to get into this playoff race, get into the playoff picture in the Western Conference. He wanted to be a part of it. So kudos to him, and we hope to have him back here within we're giving him as much time as he needs, but if it's a couple weeks, so be it. We miss him. We wish him the best, and we can't wait to have him back.
Attaboy, Darren. Speedy recovery. We'll keep the chair warm for you. Hey, listen, everybody, can you do me a favor? If you're listening to this, on your favorite podcast app, wherever it might be, could you just open it up, head over there and hit the rating for us and leave some sort of a comment? We'd really appreciate it. It helps the show get out in front of other people. Or better yet, maybe you could send a text or a snap with a link to the program to somebody you know, another goalie, goalie coach, goalie parent. Can you send a link and a snap, Woody? I don't know. I don't snap.
I am unfamiliar with the Snapchat rules and regulations. I would have to ask my daughters, neither of whom are here, but we will get back to you on that.
There you go. There you go. So our feature guest this week, presented by Sensorina VR, is Strauss Mann. Recently signed his first pro contract with the San Jose Shark and adds to our list of 2022 Olympians who joined us on the podcast. And Woody's also going to make a trip to see Cam at the Hockey Shop, where they do a deep dive on the new Warrior G6, which features something that's, pretty radical and something I would be willing to bet more than a few listeners have wondered to themselves, what if I could? But we'll save the details until a little bit later, won't we, Woody?
Yes, we will. I was curious to see where we were going because we actually recorded 3 different sets of new gear. We're all ready to go with all the new gear coming in, and I wasn't sure which one we were running this week. So
I hope I got it right.
Tease.
Surprise, Cam.
Here's a little tease for you, folks. New gear is coming in at the Hockey Shop. Pretty much like on a weekly basis. I don't know if you happen to follow their Instagram page at @THSGoal, you would know that they have eFlex 5 CCM sticks in. I know that's a hot commodity that didn't launch as scheduled last year, is going to launch with a couple different options this summer, but they've got some in now. So I think the key here is with all this new gear coming in, we're going to have to sort of space out our reviews and our overviews with Cam. So make sure you're over at thehockeyshop.com, following them on all their social media channels. Like I said, at THSGoal on both Instagram and on Twitter to get an idea of what the latest and greatest is coming in. I don't know that we'll be able with a once a week show. I'm not sure we're going to be able to keep up with all the new stuff that they have coming in. And so the best way to stay on top of making sure you don't miss out on new arrivals or sometimes special limited edition like the Bauer Pro Return series, both the gear and a reminder, there are Bauer Pro Return sticks there still available. Make sure you keep an eye on the social channels to stay on top of all the latest and greatest offerings and sales at the Hockey Shop and thehockeyshop.com.
Hey, before we get to that gear segment, Woody, the NHL regular season is ending. I think it's Friday this week. Where are we on the Vezina race? Is anything sort of stabilizing itself? Is anything changing? What do the fancy stats tell us?
The fancy stats brought to you by Clearsight Analytics and our good friend Stephen Valaquette, who you're gonna hear a lot about in this episode because he's got a relationship with Strauss Mann, I know you already teased the feature interview, but folks, you may not everyone may recognize the name Strauss Mann, despite the fact he had 2 standout seasons at the University of Michigan, despite the fact he beat Canada at the Olympics with the United States in Beijing recently, and the fact he signed that new contract. But trust me, you're going to want to listen to this interview. It is just loaded with great insights. But back to the guys. Speaking of great, the guys at the top of the league, it's become a one-horse race, Hutch. Igor Shesterkin right now he's back to pulling away with it. 38 goals saved above expected, courtesy of Clearsight Analytics. UC Saros, who had temporarily caught Igor at around 33 last week, he's dropped all the way down to 27. And Thatcher Demko was in the number 3 spot last week at around 26 goals saved above expected. Couple rough starts. The Canucks got touched up on the road in Minnesota and Calgary last night, and he's dropped all the way to 6. So our top 4 in terms of goals saved above expected right now is Igor Shesterkin, who I think is a slam dunk for the Vezina at this point. UC Saros in second. Ilya Sorokin in third is interesting because there's a non-playoff team, much like the conversation we had about Demko last week. And kudos to Hutch, who picked Ilya Sorokin for his Vezina winner this season. Ville Husso's in fourth. Then Jacob Markstrom in fifth. And like I said, Demko in sixth, Vasilevsky seventh, Kemper eighth, Freddie Anderson ninth, and Tristan Jarry 10, rounding out your top 10. Hey, at 11th, worth noting, not in the Vezina conversation, how about Anton Forsberg? Closing in on a top 10 spot in goals saved above expected, a guy who was claimed off waivers by Ottawa and now has signed an extension with them. A lot of people were yelling last season about why Kenny Holland hadn't done anything with the Oilers in goal. Where was their guy to sort of fill in when Mike Smith was hurt and Mikko Koskinen was struggling? Again, I'm talking about last season. Yeah, he had him. Anton Forsberg. Let's not forget, Anton Forsberg was Edmonton Oilers property last season. And a good pickup by them. I remember talking to goalie coach Dusty Schwartz about that decision-making process. And the problem was they had him and they just put him on waivers in order to keep 9 defensemen, and it cost them. And here we are 2 years later, and this guy's doing a hell of a job for the Ottawa Senators. So I'm not sure, Hutch. It's really interesting. I think Shesterkin wins. Saros is definitely on the finalist ballot. And in terms of who's number 3 to join him, my hunch is it will be Markstrom. But there are arguments to be made amongst a handful of guys to at least be a part of that finalist ballot. And another thing, let me ask you this one. We watched, in terms of workload, UC Saros is far and away the busiest goalie in the league. I guess the only guys that are close to him are Thatcher Demko and Connor Hellebuck. So as we watched Demko a little bit recently, UC Saros a little bit recently. In both cases, they played back-to-back games and performances afterwards struggled a little bit. As we watched them not so much maybe stub their toes the wrong term, but we watched them have more sort of uncharacteristically not great nights. We take a look at Igor Shesterkin, who was almost being disqualified for the Hart because he wasn't getting enough starts, and now he's got shutouts in like 2 of his last 3 starts. Is there an argument to be made that it's the workload that may be slowing down some of these top-end goaltenders down the stretch as they sort of run out of gas? And Igor Shesterkin, after being handled a little bit with kid's glove in terms of his starts throughout the year, is now ready to take off and playing some of his best hockey after a brief dip in March. It's, I don't know that you can make any conclusive statements, but it makes for a fascinating argument, especially as we continue to move away from, workhorse, overworked goaltenders in the league.
No, absolutely. I think the workload is incredibly important, and only in a slightly related way. We know in past years, the Vezina has sort of felt like a career award where people are recognizing the performance of a goaltender over years, even though it really technically only applies to a single season. I think part of that is just recognizing consistency over time and how incredibly important that can be for an organization. So, is there a greater value in having somebody who can play more games at a high level? I think there is. I just don't really know how you define it. I think the best we can probably do is say there needs to be some sort of minimum, obviously not defined, but in the eyes of a voter before you really qualify. And hey, kudos to a team that manages it well, like the Rangers, who've worked on that workload. Some teams, some coaches just overplay guys, and I guess that's part of the game too, isn't it? So I think it's important to recognize that. The other one, Woody, the other trophy maybe we don't talk quite as much about, the Jennings Trophy. I don't know how many of our listeners realize this. Heck, are you even old enough to know this, Woody? The criteria for the Jennings Trophy, fewest goals allowed by a team in a season, that used to be the criteria for the Vezina Trophy before the NHL GMs voted on it. So if you're looking back in time at all those Vezina winners, they would technically these days be Jennings Trophy winners. And I think it's getting kind of interesting because you mentioned Igor Shesterkin and the workload, and his Rangers are currently tied as we record this on Sunday at 194 goals allowed with Carolina. Carolina's played one more game though. So what do you think? Carolina's to lose?
Will be fascinating, Hutch, to see what kind of decisions each of these three teams make that are in the hunt. The Flames are only 2 off that pace as well. But what did they do the other night? They gave Dan Vladar the start and backed him up with Dustin Wolf. Gave Jacob Markstrom a complete night off, obviously prioritizing rest with the playoffs ahead. Like you mentioned, both the Rangers and the Flames have an extra game left to play compared to the Hurricanes. The one difference for the Hurricanes, they don't have the number one goaltender. Freddie Anderson's still out with an unidentified, what we assume is a lower body injury, looked like possibly a left knee. Still no timeline on that. So they're going to be trying to win this with Antti Ranta and Peter damn it.
Poor Woody always gets stuck with the names.
Kochetkov. I need to have it in front of me. For some reason, I can only say it, and I don't even know if I say it right when I'm reading it. So, and congratulations to Peter, who I got to watch at the World Juniors here in Vancouver as he took over the Russian net from highly touted prospect Daniil Tarasov that year. I was surprised. I thought it was Tarasov's net for sure. Kochetkov took it over and was exceptional. Really love his game. Could be interesting to see if Antti Ranta stumbles, or we know health has been an issue for him over the years. We could see, for a team that was considered a cup contender, we could potentially see a first-year North American pro and only recently come over to play in North America, Peter Kochetkov, as the number one goaltender, or at least an option, for the Carolina Hurricanes going into the playoffs. But congratulations to him on his first NHL win. Let's see how that Jennings Trophy race works out down the stretch, final few games here.
Yeah, hey, that means that he's pulled ahead of you and I in the race. He's got one more win than we do in the NHL. So congratulations. We still got time to catch him, I think. Yeah,
maybe if there's still hope for guys in their 50s to get an NHL debut, or closing on 50 in my case. Note on Kochetkov's debut, wearing a Russian-made Michelin glove. We see that brand in the KHL. As many of you noted on our Instagram post, as I noted on my Instagram post, he arrived in Carolina after being called up from Chicago, and in his first couple of practice was wearing a true glove. He wears true pads, true blocker. But in the American League, he's been wearing this Michelin Russian-made glove. And I put a post out that it was interesting he was wearing his, I will eat this because I definitely misspelt Michelin. I had it Milken. Screwed up the post there. But also, I reached out to see if that was eligible for the NHL, and I was told no, because it had not been approved. The company had never submitted gear for approval, and that particular piece of equipment had not made its way through the NHL offices. So people are kind of all over us because he wore it in his debut, although the label was covered up because they don't have licensing fees. Clearly, and the equipment trainer there in Carolina is one of the best, Jorg Alves, who does have an appearance in the National Hockey League ahead of you and me in a e-bug role.
And on the InGoal Radio podcast.
Yeah, he is awesome. Like I said, one of the best. So clearly he noted and was aware that there might be an issue there. My guess is, and I haven't got a return text yet, but my guess is, despite the fact that, like I said, at the beginning of the week, I had to confirm that was not supposed to be an eligible glove for the NHL. My guess is that they took care of making sure that it got approved before he wore it out on the ice.
Hey, let's just clarify for everybody, because I think you've sort of mentioned it in here, Woody, but there's a difference between approved to wear it in the league versus approved to have your logo on the gear.
Yeah, I mean, you can wear stuff that isn't sort of part of the marketing and licensing because you have to pay. Equipment companies pay to have the logo on their equipment. They pay a licensing fee to have the logo of their equipment, and it's a sort of per piece fee to have that on display in the NHL. So if you don't pay the fee, you can just cover up the logo and still wear it. But that said, the equipment still needs to be approved by Kay Whitmore. And like I said, this particular brand had never submitted equipment for approval. So there's not like he'd approve the line or approve particular aspects of the line. And my understanding is this particular glove hadn't either. And so whether they hopped on a Zoom call and showed that the measurements were all within specs, or whether they shipped that thing FedEx right up to Kay real quick and got it back and turned around, because like I said, in practice, he was wearing a true. I will get to the bottom of that and report back next week. But obviously, like, it's not like the post we put out was right. It wasn't approved, but that doesn't mean it wasn't approved by the time he wore it, I think 4 days later after we made that post. So at the end of the day, not trying to muddy any waters, congratulations to Peter on winning his NHL debut. It's a hell of an accomplishment. I think I can segue this into our gear segment, Hutch.
Oh, can you now?
I can, because you remember that piece of equipment that you teased on this Warrior G6, something new? That, and again, this could change too, but that is also not approved for the NHL. So interestingly enough, this is a new addition to the Warrior G6 pad that might just make you too fast for the National Hockey League. Hasn't been approved yet. We'll see if that changes. Matter of fact, a lot of people made note when Colin Delia wore Warrior equipment, Warrior gloves during the summer last year. My understanding is, again, there at the time, and this too may have changed, but at the time when Warrior submitted the equipment for approval from the NHL, the pads actually weren't approved because, that wedge that they have on the knee stack, which helps stabilize it, when they measured the knee landing gear from the back of the pad, they measured it from the back face of the pad rather than from the edge of the wedge. And that made it too long, even though it was legal from the front face of the pad to the edge of the knee stack. The thinness, the degree of the thinness of how thin that thigh rise is, and not counting the wedge just made that second measurement too big. So I'm not sure if they were able to work that out, if they'll be an option in the NHL. But I do know this new feature that we're about to tease as we sit down with Cam at the hockey shop so far is not approved in the National Hockey League. Let's check in with Cam for more details on the rest of the new Warrior G6 line. Welcome back to the Hockey Shop Source for Sports. We're down here in Goalie Utopia. It is that time of year, Cam. We get to play with new stuff. You've seen the G6 customizer online. Probably heard all about their new plastic slide plate option on the inner edge of the pad. There are a lot of other features. There's a 580 glove break, Cam. Ish. See, that's why we come to you, because I know you're a big Warrior guy, so we want to get the answers on the new G6 line. We come to Cam here at the Hockey Shop or thehockeyshop.com. Cam, walk me through the biggest changes. Let's start. Obviously, I think this one jumps out.
Everybody wants to start with the knee. The most questions. Warriors need slide plate. So, yes, it is a piece of plastic. Yes, it is removable. No, it doesn't break off of shots. They have tested that. Why this is a big deal and why this feels. So you've seen people chasing that, what pad slides the best. Overall technology, whether it be 3M clear tape people have been trying to put on, Bauer's technology in terms of the way their pad slides, speed skin, Primo material from Brian's. Everyone's got their own kind of a tagline. So Warrior hasn't gone away from their air slide, which still exists on the lower calf. However, this knee. So this is something that I've actually got to try, and this will fit on some of Warrior's older generation pads too as well. So a G5, for example.
Hold on, is that available? Is it going to be available?
This is a replaceable
accessory?
This is a replaceable part that is going to be available.
So you can retrofit an old pad with this?
Technically speaking, yes, as long as it fits. There are some that it doesn't. Call me and double check, obviously. Something that is held on by Velcro this whole piece comes right off. Like I said, this is a hard piece of plastic. It's not going to break on you. But in terms of for friction and sliding, you can imagine that. You put a piece of plastic on ice at any time.
She's going to be a little slick.
Exactly. I've seen it myself. I've seen a young child who's never skated before as a goalie be able to start running circles and push across the entire blue line back and forth with very, very little trouble. That's something we don't really see too often around down here. So in terms of a bit of a game changer, I would highly, highly say so. Some control required. It is, for lack of a better term, quite slippery. So you got to hold your edges a little bit better and be able to stop in that mid overdrive, be able to cut back and push.
It's going to take some getting used to is what you're saying.
That's correct. Exactly.
And it might not be for everyone, which is why it's removable. My understanding as of right now is it won't be for anyone in the National Hockey League. I don't believe they're going to approve the use of this slide plate in the NHL, but minds get changed. Things could turn between now and then. For now, though, there's no limits on playing with it anywhere else. So kind of a cool feature, but that's not all that's new.
No, there's quite a bit more. This pad has taken a bit of a departure from, like, there's similarities, but there is actually quite a few differences from that in the G5. Let's talk about stiffness profile right off the bat. Now, we're both putting some weight on this. This is a bit of a departure from Warrior in terms of their core and structure. Very, very stiff. Now, in terms of for longevity aspect wise, and also overall durability of the pad itself, this is quite an advancement. Pete has really taken the core of this pad and stiffened it back up. Hypercomp returns, which is adding a lot of this rigidity to the pad. It's going to help to aid in that rebound, and it's also going to help to aid in that longevity of the pad. This guy isn't going to break down like previous Warrior pads, especially in the upper thigh portion. 5 different options in terms of your core Flex It Custom. Something we can definitely go over. Give me a call, 604-589-8299 or 1-800-567-7790.
Oh, hold on. So what you're saying is stock, super stiff, but you've got the ability to customize something with a little more flex, a little more
Believe it or not, there's even a stiffer option than this.
Come on.
Yeah, I mean, hey, some of the, especially their Euro guys, that's where that request came from. Quite interesting. Coverage edge still makes its return too as well. If you look down straight at the pad's kind of angled. When you're down to the butterfly, that does help to get pucks back forward, back out in front of you, as well as their whole concept, once again, is having that little bit of extra puff out helps to prevent that skipping up. Again, something a little bit different than we see from Warrior versus some of the other companies. Still a softer boot, and you need to have that softer boot, especially with how stiff of a pad it is. Moving on to the back and the leg channel, whereas again, we've seen some updates and some changes. Warriors puffed out the shin versus the G5 model and previous models. This gives more connectivity to the pad. This is also going to help aid in rebounds as we're losing that dead air in between your shin and the actual pad. So the more tight and connected that is, the better rebound quality of the pad is. You don't have that pad push in and then want to rebound back out.
So this is a pretty open leg channel.
Correct.
And yet the idea is to maintain a little more connection between the front of the shin, down around the ankle, and the back of the pad.
Exactly.
Even with a leg channel that's pretty loose and open and it's going to rotate.
It's open, however, you can get it quite tight because Warriors also added an additional slot, something that you saw come out in their G5, to be able to really tighten up that leg channel as well. So you get some really customizable options just even on the stock pad. They've also added their own version of a rotation strap. Velcro, it goes on easy, can also be removed easy by just a simple plastic clip as well. One last really notable feature for the pad, the addition of an actual laced-in toe bridge. Something that you saw a little bit on G5 Custom, especially with the Euro guys. Now it's available stock off the wall. You want to throw on the laces, get rid of the bungee toe tie at the front. Totally up to you. You have that option.
Yeah, and I think probably a good option, not to take away from some of the innovation behind, because they were one of the first to add that, but we've talked about it at InGoal, going into an RVH with skate laces on, you need a little bit of that gap to get the bottom of the pad sealed and the skate inside. So sometimes with the elastic, that can be a little tougher to do and get that seal every time. And also, as you push off the post, the elastic gives and costs you some of your push. All right, so that's the pad. That's the new G6 pad. Stock, I noticed that, and I said something Warriors done in the past, stock is instead of +1 or +2, it's +1.5.
Yes, so that sizing remains consistent.
Nice little gap. Now tell me about the blocker and the glove.
So, 2 separate blockers, 2 separate catchers.
We call them gloves.
Catchers.
Gloves.
Catchers. What do? Catch pucks. Unlike you.
Not when you're wearing them.
I'd use the same joke. You can't use the same joke twice. Okay, 6.0. So blocker-wise, we're having the similar G5 shape and profile. They're still using the Coverage Plus, which is that thicker blocker board. Again, helping to effectively cut off that angle because of that thicker blocker board forward. Straighter, flatter blocker board. Again, not too much of a departure from the G5. If you're familiar with that and like the blocker, you're going to be comfortable with the 6.0. Overall, the finger protection has been redone a little bit. Warriors actually flattened it out a little bit more, less segmented, but however, it still covers the hand very, very well. They've also added a large index finger pad, keep that finger protected, pucks riding up the stick. Still removable palms as well for the 6.0.
6.1.
I was going to talk about the glove first.
Oh, so they come in sets?
Yeah, sorry, catcher. So, two different gloves as well. So, continuing with the 6.0 series, based off of, again, that G5 catcher. Basically, what we're looking for here is a more wide open style catch. Again, someone familiar with that G6 model is still going to feel comfortable in this one. Fundamentally, not too much has changed. They've actually cut off some of the surface area of the palm and put it back into the pocket of the glove, so a bit of a deeper catch surface. You still have the removable palms. Stock is 75. You still have your 60 and your 90-degree palm, which again is just changing your hand position on the break angle because this break angle doesn't change. It's just where your hand is positioned on. You can take them out, wash them. That's a great feature as well. Custom, you can actually order with a thicker palm too as well. So that's something new that we haven't seen from Warrior. So the chance to get some practice palms in there as well. Switching it over. 6.1.
Okay. You can have the blocker first.
So in comparison, much more of a banana shape to the blocker itself. More reminiscent of the GT2 series of their blocker. Overall feel-wise, stock. Not a removable palm. That's important. You can do that when you order custom if you do want it to be a removable palm, but stock off the wall will be laced in. Overall feel-wise, a little bit more center balanced. Again, guys that are looking for not necessarily that flat forward, just kind of sitting there style of a blocker. A little bit more, again, banana shaped, a little bit more technical control, especially when you're blocking and moving to it. So a little bit more required that way. Similar index finger protection and overall armadillo protection for the fingers. So not changing that way. Again, someone looking for a bit of a steeper blocker board angle, as well as something that you do have to control a little bit more, less of a blocky blocker and more of a, I'm lacking a good term for this one.
Blocky blocker. I like that one.
We'll keep up with blocky blocker.
Blocky blocker. This is the blockiest blocker that ever blocked.
There you go. Tongue twister for today. Something really cool though. Now we're going to talk about the 6.1 glove. So it's not a 580. However, in terms of how it closes on the hand and how it presents in a stance, very reminiscent of. So this catching surface is now designed to be longer as opposed to wider versus the 6.0 glove. So as you look at it, we get more of that straight up and down presentation, which is, again, eerily reminiscent of that CCM 580. In terms of a closure on the hand and feel-wise, I would say it's not too far off. It's not that exact same. You don't exactly get that full-on duckbill over, but it's very close. So someone that is using a 580 is comfortable with it. In theory, should be comfortable with this style of a glove. Stock off the wall, this palm will be sewn in. However, you do get the opportunity of when you order custom, you can get removable palms. You can also, again, change that hand position on that break angle itself with their 60, 75, and 90-degree palm additional options. Again, a nice additional extra feature from Warrior, keeping up with their 2 options for gloves.
Anything else? That's a pretty extensive overview, Cam.
That was. Got it all out. But you can talk about it some more with me here at the Hockey Shop, 604-589-8299 or 1-800-567-7790, or check us out at thehockeyshop.com.
Not much to add other than clearly this man knows his stuff when it comes to the Warrior line. So if you've got any questions about the new G6 and whether it fits your game or you want a custom option, make sure you give him a shout. Thanks, Ken.
Blockiest blocker that ever blocked.
So what do you think, Woody? Could you play with the slide plates? I'm thinking I would struggle, but I would love to try them.
I absolutely want to try them. I mean, I remember every goalie that we had test the Bauer's first iteration of the original Odin line, that original sort of Supreme with the new skin and the new hard inner edge. Every goalie that tested was like, man, like I'm oversliding. Like they had to make adjustments. at the end of the day, as long as you still feel stable over it, the faster you can make those adjustments. If I'm going to be faster going left to right and I still feel stable and in control, it just means I have to push less, or you just adjust. But anything that makes you faster, I mean, maybe this is the threshold. Maybe that hard polycarbonate / plastic right on the ice is just too slippery. That's possible. I've heard that that's been some of the feedback, even from pros that have tried it overseas. Some guys, have looked at it and are willing to give it a go. Other guys are like, that's just too fast. But man, is there such a thing as too fast if you can find a way to control it? At the end of the day, I'd really like to find out. And I think there's going to be a lot of goalies that feel the same. And the beauty is, if you're somebody who's already in a Warrior product and like the way the line has evolved, and we've always been big Pete Smith fans. I know we don't review their equipment. There's a massive unpaid bill issue that we run into here at InGoal with Warrior. We're a small company. They're owned by New Balance, and they left us hanging on a big ticket. So that's why we don't review their equipment, but doesn't mean we're not fans of Pete Smith. We love innovation here at InGoal. We're all about innovation, and this is a product line that's got a lot of innovation. So maybe we find water under that bridge one of these days and get back out on the ice in it and bring you a full, detailed, true InGoal magazine breakdown on it. But for now, based on what Cam teased us with, just color me very curious.
Yeah, I wonder if we're going to see some of the smaller aftermarket companies that are looking for the latest little gadget to create for goaltenders might make some slide plates now that will work on other pads. I personally, I love what you were saying. I think these are going to really accentuate skill. Like either they're going to make you faster because you've got the skill to control that. If you don't have the skill, I think you might be in a little bit of trouble. I was thinking to the video that was circulating by the Canucks this week of Ian Clark mic'd up with Thatcher Demko. And he was doing those little tiny knee shuffles to adjust his positioning. I thought, how do you do those with the slide plates? Like, there's going to have to be some adjustment. Don't know if you could do it.
I do think that, like, as much as the principal point of contact is the knee, there still is, like, the pad's still flush on the ice, right? There's still calf resting on sort of, whether there's sort of padding on the inner leg or not, and whether that's allowed in the NHL or not is another story for another day, because we've seen some get slipped in despite it being not in the rules. At the end of the day, there's going to be some pressure on the rest of the inside edge of the pad. So, and that's why I'd love to get out and try it. So is that enough to offset it in those situations where you don't feel like it's just going to slip apart? And, if you don't have an incredible amount of strength through the groins to sort of keep it together, again, I think it's a matter of whether you can control it. And you're right, that takes some skill. It might even take some strength, but I'm dying to try it. I'll be honest. I'm dying to try it and see. Nothing like that feeling of making a quick push to the back door and having somebody who think they got an open net slam that thing against your pads. It might be the best feeling in the world as a goalie. At least it's one that I like. And if that helps me get there faster to close that time and space, count me in for a trial.
Absolutely. Look, it's all speculation for us right now, isn't it? And if anybody else wants to speculate for themselves and you've listened to this segment, but you haven't actually seen the slide plates, head over to YouTube. We put the gear segments on YouTube every week. We also link them underneath the podcast over at ingoalmag.com. And you can see these slide plates for yourselves, get a close-up feeling and decide, are they something maybe you can use? And hey, when you're over at YouTube, how about you do me a favor? Let's everybody listening, it would be really cool. Check out the new slide plates, check out all the other great new features in the G6 pads, and leave us a comment below the YouTube video and just let us know. What do you think? Do you want to use them? Do you want to see them on your favorite brand of gear?
And I think we should, and Cam already talked about this in the review itself, as much as the focus is going to be on those slide plates, they are removable. And there are a number of other new features on this pad. The option of a standard, sort of toe tie, as opposed to Warrior's unique system with the elastics that go through the skates. There's also the new gloves. I mean, some new options in the two different glove and blocker models. Just, again, a continued evolution of a product that I think Warrior is one of the ones that have done a lot of innovating. Like we said, fans of Pete Smith, just, there's a reason we don't do a lot of reviews and pay your bills and all that stuff. But, fans of the designer and fans of the people behind it. And so really curious to see where this goes for them. I love innovation, and this is another bold step.
There you go. Woody's going to head over to YouTube after we post the video, and he will leave a comment there. talking about his favorite feature from the new line. And then you can follow up underneath Woody and let him know what you think and whether you want to try those slide plates or something else, maybe the new stiff profile, whatever it is. See what you like. Okay, this week and every week, Sense Arena VR presents the feature interview. This week, it's going to be our friend Strauss Mann, InGoal listener Strauss Mann, will be joining us. And Sense Arena, as everybody knows by now, if you've been a good listener of the InGoal Radio podcast, is a virtual reality training system for goaltenders as well as players. It's available for the Oculus Quest VR headset, and you can use it as is with the with the hand controllers for the Quest, or with these attachments. They call them sleeves that mount the hand controllers to your gloves. Simply put, from me, Sense Arena is the best off-ice training tool for goaltenders. For taking shots, for reading shots, for following and understanding plays, working your hands. Woody, it's so realistic, I find myself getting lost in the game. I'll be batting virtual pucks out of the air with my stick. It's absolutely incredible. You've had a few problems with it, though, I think. It's so realistic.
Oh, I have one little problem.
Word of caution. Like, if you're going to try this at home, folks.
Well, I mean, the always map out your area, because it is so realistic that I did almost break my hand and knock coffee all over my computers the first time I put it on trying to make a blocker save.
Don't be impatient. Set it up properly, folks.
But the other one, and I experienced this recently because I was heading into playoffs and I had not had a chance to play for several weeks. Some of my other skates had been canceled, and so I was feeling super rusty. So I threw it on, but I didn't, I have the attachments on gloves, but I have them on a 60-degree break glove, and I'm playing in a 590 model. And
okay, here we go. Wait. I could just hear it. So that puck got passed because I was warming up in the wrong glove.
No goals went in, but early in warmups, I literally had pucks that were hitting different parts of the glove and as opposed to in the pocket. I think it's realistic enough, because truth is, a 600 break, we talked about this. Remember we did the Mike Vaughn overview with the Vaughn gloves, how if you're missing pucks here, this glove puts more of the pocket in that area. Literally, there's about a 3 or 4 inch difference in sort of where that pocket will sit, depending on some of these breaks. And I had the Oculus attached and maybe a little too far out towards the end of the glove on the 60-degree break, and was using that. And I go into a real game and I'm reaching at pucks and it's hitting a different, it's not like they were going in, but they weren't going in the pocket. I was just missing them. And it took me a little bit to make that adjustment. So make sure you use the same break model glove. Not everybody has a bunch of different models lying around their house to strap it to, first of all. But and I will say, 1-0 shutout in the first round of the playoffs for us. So there were other parts that definitely paid off for sure.
I actually had that in my roundup before you segued away from it into the gear segment. We like to talk about a few things that happen around hockey, and I was going to surprise Woody with a congratulations for his first 1-0. I call that the goaltender's perfect game, when you can win a game 1-0. And to do that in the playoffs, Woody, and yes, he warmed up with the wrong break glove, but Sense Arena helped Woody get a 1-0 win in the playoffs. Congratulations, Sense Arena.
You know who else Sense Arena helps? Strauss Mann. Didn't realize it while we were doing this interview. This is, to tease it and set it up a little bit, this is one of the goalies that I love. And you're going to love this interview, folks, because Strauss is a no stone unturned guy. And some of those stones that he's turned get a little extreme, and he admits that. He takes it to the nth degree on a couple of items. But we love goalies that are always looking for ways to get better. And I should have asked him during the interview if he'd ever tried Sense Arena. Of course he has. They had it with his team, Haleftio, in Sweden this year, and he really enjoyed it. And he's actually in the process of trying to get set up to get a set of his own now that he's back in North America. So add Strauss Mann to the list of names of pro goaltenders at the highest end of the sport that are using this virtual reality training tool to get better, not just in terms of seeing pucks and stopping pucks, but all the brain training exercises that you can do on Sense Arena, vision training exercise, all those extra elements that you can do. Count him in on all of that. Count me in on all of that. Can't wait to bring you this interview with both of us going through all the other ways that Strauss Mann has found to get better at his craft over the past number of years, leading up to signing with the San Jose Sharks just last week. Really excited to welcome to the InGoal Radio podcast for the first time, hopefully the first time of many, Strauss Mann recently signed with the San Jose Sharks, and there is a whole bunch in your background, your time at Michigan that I want to get into, your path to Michigan, the decision to go to Sweden. You're coming off your first pro season, and you spent it overseas. There's a ton here, but let's start with right now. Signing with the San Jose Sharks after spending the year overseas in Sweden. Where's the mindset right now? How happy are you, especially having gone through the process last year? And you tell me, what were there not offers at this point last season coming out of Michigan? Were you looking to stay in North America? Just where's the mindset right now? How excited are you to join the Sharks? And walk me through the past year a little bit.
Yeah, first of all, thanks so much for having me on. I'm a huge fan of this podcast. I've gotten really into it lately, actually. So it's great to be on, and hopefully I can share some good stories and messages along the way. But yeah, so it's been a little bit of a whirlwind getting back from Sweden recently and signing the contract that being announced, and it's just been a pretty overwhelming experience. I think whenever you have big highs, I think everyone can attest that the coolest part is the people you share with, and just having people from my past and present reaching out. It's pretty humbling, and especially those who know me for a while, know me since I was young, and know how hard it was for me to get here, and there wasn't an easy path. I know a lot of drafted guys signing maybe is just kind of expected, but for me it wasn't that, and so just being able to share that with a lot of people is pretty special. But yeah, last year around this time, I didn't have the offers I necessarily wanted. For me, I know it was a little bit of a size thing, and also just the year, there weren't a lot of contracts being handed out. So I had some AHL offers and everything, but I had this offer in Sweden, which kind of came out of nowhere. So I ended up taking that, thinking the AHL and the SHL are probably pretty similar leagues. And if you sign an AHL deal, it seems these days you're usually going to end up in the coast. So it seemed like a good opportunity to go somewhere else and prove that I could do it at a different level. So that's the unique path I took.
Okay, so now you're going to have to help me with the pronunciation of where you signed it. Is it Skellefteå? How do they say? I've spent a little bit of time in Sweden. I've been up to northern Sweden to Örnsköldsvik, which I learned quickly just call it Ovik. So you help me with, is it Skellefteå, or am I getting that right? Am I even close?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard it pronounced a couple different ways. So at this point, I don't think you can go wrong, but I think it's Skellefteå, if I'm correct. I've been there for a year, so hopefully I am correct. But yeah, it's a little bit complicated. I still can't understand much Swedish at this point.
Okay, so what was that like? Because and that decision, we've heard a lot about Swedish goaltending coaches, the system they've set up over there. We've had guys like Thomas Magnusson from the Swedish Federation on the podcast before. You go from Michigan to playing in Sweden from a goalie specific mindset. And I know you're a guy who's all about growth mindsets. How was the coaching different? How was the game different? How big an adjustment was that?
Yeah, it was a big adjustment. I was definitely looking forward to that, though. I think it was a pretty valuable experience for me to go to a different culture as a person, and then also as a player. The game's so different. It's so pass first there, where North America is so much shot first, and obviously that's changing in different ways thanks to my friend Steve Belicat. But yeah, it was a big adjustment with the bigger ice, and you could see it from day one. I mean, going into a pro team, you'd assume it would be what you're always told, like you're just property of them. It's kind of that big adjustment, but it's definitely a little bit different in Sweden. They really take care of the guys, and really care about development. And obviously I was fortunate to go to a really good team and an organization that emphasizes that. I know not every organization is like that, but you could definitely feel a good vibe in the locker room. And it felt like a good in-between college and pro for me, if that makes any sense. Just taking that next step, but maybe not being thrown right into the mess of North American pro.
The ruthlessness at times of North American pro.
Yeah, exactly, which is what it is. But I think for some people, sometimes that adjustment can be tough.
Was that part of the mindset and the decision to leave Michigan? I mean, they were a wagon this year, powerhouse. Was it just time for you to try something different? What was the thought process behind that? Because you're coming off, the last 2 years at Michigan, both 930 plus save percentages. You're the captain, first captain in 78 years at the University of Michigan. That choice that now is time to turn pro, and amidst the pandemic and all the things that come with that, what led to that decision, and what let you know it was time to take this step?
Yeah, I mean, a lot went into that decision. It wasn't taken lightly. I just felt like I was ready to take that next step, and I think as an undersized goalie, I had 2 good years at Michigan, and obviously couldn't get the deal I wanted. So I didn't necessarily know if a third was going to do that for me. And obviously now sitting here, it seems like a good decision. Who knows if I'm not signed, but it really just showed like if you go to a different league, maybe you get rid of some of those question marks from scouts and GMs. I mean, obviously when I decided to go pro, I didn't necessarily know I'd go to Sweden, but I knew that if I stayed at Michigan, maybe there would always be those question marks, and then I'd be leaving as a 23-year-old, and I don't know if that's the place I wanted to be at. So, I ended up taking a little bit of a risk there, and I feel pretty good about it at this point.
Now, I feel like I buried the lead here a little bit too, because along that path in Sweden, there was a little interruption to the season, a little thing we call the Winter Olympics in Beijing. What did that opportunity mean to you to get to wear Team USA colors, to be a part of that program, to be on the biggest stage in sports in the world and representing your country at the Winter Olympics?
Yeah, it was probably the most special experience in my life to this point. It's pretty impossible to put into words. And I kept saying, in some ways, it didn't mean anything because it was just another hockey tournament and you're just going to play a game you love. And I'm sure a lot of goalies and pros can understand that feeling. And to that point, it was a lot of players I had played with in the past. It was players I was playing with currently in the SHL. So it didn't feel like, okay, this is way above my skill level. Like I felt confident in my ability to go there and play well. But then there's the other side, which your inner child comes out and you're like, holy shit, the Olympics, like, this is crazy. And I think that's kind of more of what my family and friends were feeling. And I was trying not to let myself go too down that path because I wanted to go in confident. But just being there with all those athletes in the village was just crazy. It kind of felt like a college dorm at times. And then every now and then you'd look around in the cafeteria or whatnot and just be like, oh my gosh, like every one of these people is the best in the world at their craft. And I'm one of them right now. Like it was pretty cool in that sense, and just being around people and like Sean White in the opening ceremonies and meeting Nathan Chen, like, having good conversation with him. It was a pretty surreal experience that I don't think I fully grasped now. I think over time that will hopefully start to sink in a bit. And like I said, with signing, it was just such a special experience for my family and friends that was really the beauty of it.
Now, I know you are a no stone unturned guy. You mentioned Stephen Valaket. I know you've worked with him since you were 13. So, and I've read the stories. Obviously, the media is going to focus a lot of things on diet and the paleo and the light blocking, blue light blocking glasses and all those things. But to me, I look at all those things and I just look at a guy who, like I said, no stone unturned, always looking for ways to get better. So, advice based on your experience at the Olympics, how did you separate those fanboy moments, like Sean White, for crying out loud, like that I'm here, and manage to sort of focus back to, like you said, just another hockey tournament? Are there lessons there in terms of the way you prepare, or things that you did to sort of help you get past the spotlight sort of moment and back into yourself and into your game?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the key there, the word you said was prepare. For me, everything's about preparation. I'm a believer that you can't rise to the occasion, you sink to your training. And for me, it's impossible to just wing it and go through something the first time while you're at the Olympics, be like, okay, I I got to dial in somehow and mentally focus, or when you get in that game, being like, okay, this is a huge game. I got to somehow make it happen. It's all about syncing back to your preparation. And so when you go your whole off season or in season preparing, not only physically but mentally, and going through these situations, whether through visualization, which I know a lot of other goalies have talked about on this podcast, or just going through these situations before you get to the big situation, and that Olympic situation is what it's all about, because you're not going to be able to wing it out there. You're gonna sink to the level of your training, and if you know you've prepared and you know you've gone through it in your head, then there's an ease to that, and you can say to yourself, okay, I've got this. I can let go. I can trust my game. I can trust my preparation because I've done it before, whether on this stage or just in my head visualizing. So I think that's the beauty of preparation. And I'd be lying if I said, oh, I just went out there and I just really like seized the moment. I did, but I really, my goal was just to let go and trust what I had done in the months and years prior.
Can you share some of what that preparation looks like now for you, maybe heading into a big game like that, or any game, I guess, since the idea is to keep it consistent, and how it's evolved over the years? We've heard from a lot of guys, especially this is for you next year, going to your first year, well, I guess first year North American pro, you would have experienced it in Sweden. But, quite often we at InGoal, we're guilty of sort of sharing all these little things that goalies do. And then some goalies try to do them all and it becomes overwhelming and too much. Is that something you've gone through? How have you weeded out what you need, what you want, and how you get ready for games, whether it's first one in Sweden, first one on the Olympic stage, or just your junior season at Michigan?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there. It's the biggest thing is just finding what works for you. And I know that's kind of a cliche, but I think you gotta test the boundaries there a bit. Like you're saying, that you might be doing too much at times, and I'm probably guilty of that, trying to add too much to my game. And now my process right now at this point in my career is a lot about simplifying and really finding what's important, because there's a million things you can be doing. And sometimes I don't give myself enough free time because I want to be doing them all. And that's not healthy. So yeah, I think sometimes you just gotta play with a lot of things, figure out what works. But getting back to it, like for me, it's been about meditation, visualization, stretching, just taking care of my body in different ways, whether diet and learning about new ways of training. For me, it all starts from knowledge and reading books and listening to podcasts, and that curiosity, that wanting to get better. And then from there, you learn about all these new things, which then take you to new places. And it's just a great feedback loop. And then from there, it's about simplifying, because like we said, you can't do it all. But yeah, for me, things like visualization, meditation, they're things that I do every day, calming the mind. I think in our society today, our brains aren't adapted to be in our world with phones and social media and all this. And it's easy to say, like, get rid of the distractions, but we're addicted to our phones. We're addicted to it. It's everywhere. Everyone needs you to be responding at a moment's notice. And how can you gain a competitive advantage there? It's through these little tools like meditation and things that get you away from that. And then going back to the big game moments, like there's things the day of that I do to get myself in the right mind frame, but it's the daily habits and the daily work I do to get rid of those negative thoughts and view them as just my survival instincts rather than logic. And so just going through daily activities like that is big for me. And again, maybe that's not the biggest thing for everyone. I think my nature is being a little bit of an overthinker, so it's something I need to do to balance that out. But for someone else, it might be something completely different. And I think sometimes when older goalies give advice, it's like, it comes off as you have to do this or that to be good. But this worked for me, and something completely different could work for you. I'm just a believer that mindset to get better is the difference maker.
Well, it's kind of like on the ice, isn't it? Like tools in the toolbox. The best advice would be to try them all and then find the ones that work for you and get rid of the ones that maybe don't. But ignoring some of them, There was a great line in the ESPN piece on you. I loved it. If everyone did it, it wouldn't be a competitive advantage, would it?
Yeah, that was something I kind of remember saying too. And I don't know if I thought about it until I said that. But yeah, I'm not going to sit here and say I don't care what people think of me. I think sometimes I get that vibe just from interviews like that talk about my blue light glasses or diet or whatnot. I obviously do things a lot differently, and people judge that, and I know that, and it does get to me sometimes. I think the biggest thing is I just care more about getting better than what people care about me or what people think about me. It's not that I don't care about what people think, and I'm getting better at that. I'm trying not to care. And I think as I continue to progress and people get to know me better, they stop caring because they see it's just me and just what I do, and maybe don't judge me as much for it anymore. But yeah, it's that's a funny line for sure. And I just care about the little things because I know they're working, and that's what matters more to me.
Well, I mean, you're in the right spot here because we see that as like I said, like goalies that are no stone unturned, like always ways that whatever advantage you can find, whether it's equipment, whether it's mental training, whether it's on ice training, like why wouldn't you look to get better? So you're in a place where we don't look at this as the quirky thing that everyone else writes about it. We look at it as a real positive. And I guess the focus is how you channel all those things. And so you talk about outside sources and podcasts and reading. And I know you're a brilliant student as well at the University of Michigan. Business, I believe, was the focus.
Yeah.
Can you give me some examples, whether it's the business world or maybe in training, where there's something that's come to you outside of the world of goaltending that has become part of your life as a goaltender? Is there any that jump out like that, where whether it's how you train or how you prepare mentally, where you've found an edge for goaltending from outside the goaltending world?
That's a great question. It's
put you on the spot a little bit. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's really good. It's like, I think everything is everything. Like, you do everything in life how you play the game, and vice versa. It's really, I had a mental coach at Michigan who helped me a lot. He was actually someone that helped Tom Brady a lot while he was there. His name's Greg Harden, and his big thing he preached was just attacking every day and really just going all in. Like, he, especially with all his athletes, would be explaining to them, like, you have to go all in on school. You have to go all in on this growth mindset of life. And that translates directly. And something I learned, and he would preach as well, is that when you do that, when you focus on school and these other things, it takes a lot of the pressure off of the game, because you feel like life is not just hockey. And instead, hockey is to improve your life. And that's kind of how I look at it. Is hockey is, obviously, I have all these goals in the game and I want to keep progressing. But for me, it's really about doing all these things to grow as a person. And in that way, hockey is just a vehicle for me to do that. But one thing that comes to mind from what you just said is I started playing the guitar in the last year, and it was a pretty cool experience to start from scratch, like not knowing anything about guitar or playing instruments really. And just starting from the beginning, and how terrible I was, and like how I couldn't even grip the strings. And to now, I'm not great. I'm not the best guitar player ever, but I can play songs. And just seeing that progression from the beginning of the process, where at a certain point when you've played so long, you kind of forget in hockey how much better you can get at things. But to see in a craft like guitar, like how fast I was able to pick up skills. Like, even if I just worked for 30 minutes on one movement, the next day I would be able to do it 10 times better. And that was a great example that kind of showed me, oh wow, like there's all these skills that I can still grow in my game. I just sometimes, obviously the learning curve isn't as steep anymore once you've been playing for so long, but that was an interesting example that standed out to me for sure.
So I got to ask, because there are a lot of goalies that play the guitar. It's a pretty long list. Obviously, the most famous being Henrik Lundqvist. Was this a function of being in Sweden and probably having a lot of downtime in a foreign country in northern Sweden, where not an easy winter to get used to? Was it just something you, like, was that what led to it? Or were you aware in any way of sort of the history of goalies and guitars? Have you ever seen the story? We had a sports psychologist that actually has done studies. I guess I should just ask you if your glove hand felt better, because there's actual studies that show the neural pathways that you use to train to play a guitar are the same neural pathways that allow you to instinctively. So as long as I can't remember what it was, I'd have to look it up. It can't be sheet music. I think you have to be, or maybe you do need to be reading sheet music, but the way we bring that data of the next bar that's coming into our brain and relay it to that hand directly relates from a neural pathway perspective from the information we pick up off a stick blade to know where that puck is going for our hand. Did you have any idea that science existed?
I didn't know about the science. I didn't know about the research, but not too long into that journey, I definitely, I think, like thought of it on my own. It's just the way we hold glove and blocker. It's basically the exact same. And I have to be careful here because this is supposed to be a hobby that gets me away from the game. So I'm trying to not to let it correlate too much, at least where I'm too conscious of it, because I do want my hobbies to hopefully get my mind off things a bit. But if that's an added bonus, I'll definitely take it. But yeah, it totally makes sense when you think about it, and just that mind body connection in a lot of ways can definitely translate.
What about that? We talked about, going to Sweden and the decision from a professional standpoint. Northern Sweden is quite a bit different. I know I saw the Instagram post where you're quite open and honest about how difficult that can be. Here on the West Coast in Vancouver, it's funny, I was driving my daughter to volleyball this morning at 6 a.m. and it was the first day where we'd driven where the sun was starting to come up. It'd been a dark drive every morning, all winter. And it's amazing how much brighter that makes your day. So I can't imagine going through a winter with such little sun. Was that tougher than I think a lot of people might have thought going into it, or than a lot of people would even understand without having experienced it?
Yeah, it was definitely tough. I definitely knew about it going into it. It wasn't a surprise. It's just you don't really know what that's like till you're in it when you get home from the rink. And at the worst of it, the sun doesn't even really come up. It's just like a little bit of light for maybe 30 minutes to an hour or something like that. And then it's pitch black at 2:30. It's pretty tough mentally to stay up and know what to do with your time when that's going on. But yeah, in terms of the Instagram posts and everything, I think some people maybe took that to mean I was really down, or it was a really tough time for me. And while there were tough days and everything, I think I was trying to be vulnerable in a way and just show that, I don't know, the good and the bad, they're kind of inseparable. You learn so much from those experiences. Yeah, it's not fun to be in them while you're there, but now I get home and I'm in the sun and in America, and it feels so good. And I'm like really soaking it all in because I haven't had it in so long. And if I hadn't gone to Sweden, I probably wouldn't be appreciating it as much. So there's good and bads to everything. And one of the more interesting things was, just the people out there. I assume they're so used to it. Like Joakim Lindstrom, was the oldest guy on our team this year. He's had a great career, and he played in the NHL a bit too. And he grew up in that town. And I was asking him at the end of the year, like, do you get used to that? Like, and he was like, no, like it's so tough. It's really tough on the mind. But yeah, he was just talking a little bit about that. And I don't know. It was a valuable experience, and it definitely makes me appreciate the sun a lot more. Just waking up, having it in your eyes, and I think it was just definitely a valuable experience to not take that for granted either.
I wanted to ask one more about Sweden before we sort of move on a little bit and get into a little bit of history. We talked a little bit about the different style of play. What about from a goalie coaching perspective? You talked about getting different voices, and what was that like? What types of things? You talked about the rink being different, but what about style of play and style of coaching and style of teaching? Was it distinct differences? I guess there are commonalities for all goaltending, but what were some of the little nuances you noticed that were different? Do you think they were specific to the style of attack, or more broader in terms of, unique approach to goaltending compared to what you'd experienced before?
Yeah, I can't speak to the whole system necessarily, just because I only had one goalie coach in Leftio, but I was definitely very lucky with the goalie coach I had, and in a lot of ways. And I could really feel an emphasis on tracking and hands a lot more. I'm someone that's maybe been a little bit more lenient on using the chicken wing and taking up space with my positioning, and maybe not being overly worried about getting very handsy. But I definitely felt that was a big thing, is especially in Sweden. I think they would talk about it like the Finns have such good hands, and they're tracking so good into their glove, and it was just an interesting perspective I hadn't really had a lot in the past from goalie coaches. And I think that is a bit in part because of the style of play. I mean, even when I went from the SHL straight to the Olympics, like those first practices on the smaller rink with obviously most of the college guys who are used to the North American game, it was an adjustment like this. I was like, holy shit, like you guys are shooting again. It was crazy. I was so used to guys just waiting for the perfect tap in. So it's definitely a very different game. And I didn't really notice it as much when I first went over to Sweden, because I had the whole summer to adjust, and it wasn't like straight from one to the other. But yeah, in the Olympics, it was a pretty quick adjustment, and having to get used to guys shooting again, and maybe a huge emphasis more on your positioning and box control, where in Sweden it's a little bit more, I felt, about your footwork and hands. And I think that's something that I needed to work on. So it was huge for me.
I mean, and I'm guessing too, I mean, we've had this conversation in years past. It was with goalies that went over to Russia and came back, I guess a few in Sweden as well, but there can be a benefit as the NHL and North American Pro becomes so much more east, west, and speed. As much as it's different because everything is on top of you, and you're right, everything's direct and traffic, and you can't take a nap while the puck's in the corner because the rink's so big. Or as one goalie told us, have a cup of coffee while it's in the corner and have a look around and assess things. A little tougher to do over here, but that east-west beating plays on your skates, the need to be patient seems to be something that you absolutely have to have here now. And I'm guessing that's something that would have been a focal point there, like not committing early, having patience, beating plays up, not being down. Does that sound like a fair assessment? Was that your experience?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's huge. I definitely felt that the patience was something that was emphasized a lot as well. And that's something I've had in my game for a bit, just being an undersized guy, and especially even being undersized. I was way more undersized in high school. I had a late growth spurt, so I really had to learn that. And I think that paid off for me in Sweden even more so than in the US. But yeah, it's a very different game. It's pretty cool to see how even in leagues where guys have played back and forth between North America and Europe, like how different it can be. And it was a very valuable experience for me to add things to my game and get a different perspective. But it's tough at times too in a league like that, where guys love to pass it to really be aware of what's around you, but then still hold that foundation of stopping the original shot. I think in North America, you can get away with really committing to the shot and kind of more the mindset of like, okay, my teammates will take away the backdoor pass, but you really sometimes couldn't in Sweden because of how much more room there is out there. So the biggest challenge wasn't necessarily for me knowing what was around me and being aware of that. It was more being aware of that, but still holding my ground and not leaving early, and having that patience.
In some ways, I'm not making the comparison directly, but in some ways it would be like spending too much time in the summer playing shinny. If you know they're always going to pass and you start leaning to it or cheating to it in any way, you can get yourself in trouble.
For sure. Yeah, that's a great point. So I think, and while it was very good to be there for a year, I think many years maybe wouldn't do the same thing just because of what you're saying. It might start to push my game a little bit away from the North American style. But that year, that season there was definitely just such a cool experience. And I definitely grew my game in a lot of ways because of it.
You're clearly you have a passion for the position. Where did it start? How did Strauss Mann become a goalie, and where'd you fall in love with the position? Was there a guy growing up that ignited this passion for you, or is it just playing with friends? How did it all get started?
Yeah, I mean, the guy growing up for sure was the guy you had on here not too long ago, Henrik Lundqvist, big Rangers fan. Yeah, I see the jersey in the back. I have quite a few of those as well. Yeah, big Rangers fan growing up, being only like 45 minutes from the Garden and going to a lot of games and just being able to watch him on TV, just his compete level, his I don't know, it's you can't put it into words. You just have to watch him and you feel it. And that really spoke to me at a young age. I didn't have parents that played hockey or anything, but all my friends at school played, and one of them showed me a Rangers game, and I was just like, "Oh, this guy is so cool." I still, to this day, in my childhood bedroom, have a fat head of him right above my bed. And I actually met him once, and what I said to him, I was like, "I have a fat head of you right above my bed. You're the first thing I see when I wake up, and last thing I see when I go to bed." And so maybe he'll remember me if he listens to this. But yeah, he was just the best and loved him. And then yeah, I just got into it. I think a lot of guys have said this, but I just like the control you have of the game. I'm a bit of a control freak by nature, so it felt good to have that. And I'll give my dad a little bit of credit too. When I was playing house league at a young age, our team made it to the championship, and he told me I had to play goalie because we were switching off goalies every week, and he was like, "I think we'll have the best chance if you play." And after that game, we won, and I kind of just stuck with it a bit. So I'll give him a shout out as well.
Okay, so watching Lundqvist, being a fan of Lundqvist, falling in love with the game and the position because of Lundqvist, Steve told me that you actually got a chance, like you would sit behind Henrik at the Garden, like get a chance to watch him up close and sort of like, was there a point where you went from just admiring everything from a broader range perspective to starting to dial in on some of the details? Like with that point where you go from being a fan of a guy to maybe mimicking or trying to identify some of the things that make him special and bring it into your own game? Like what age did that transition start for you from just playing to really digging into it like that?
I don't know if it was fully with Lundqvist that next level kind of hit me, but for sure there was, after I met Valley, my whole mindset changed. I just started to have this growth mindset and seeing the game a different way, just seeing how much I could really throw it into my process. And a big part of that was video, and whether live or on TV, and just watching guys play. So I think I watched a lot of him, but also at that point, I don't know if his game itself, his technique spoke to me in a huge way. It definitely influenced me at a young age, just subconsciously from watching him so much. But yeah, I wouldn't say we played the exact same way or anything. But at that age, yeah, I just started to watch all these different goalies, whether Price or smaller guys. Like I remember Ronta was on the Rangers for a little, and now Soros. Like, how can you not watch all these guys? They're all so different. I think that's the beauty of the position is you can be a Craig Anderson or you can be a Carey Price and still stop the puck. So I just try and take a lot of little things from different guys. And also, as I've gotten older, I think when you're young, you always think, "Oh, this guy's so much better than me." Like, who am I to say like that he does this poorly or that I would do this differently? But then you start to grow up and you're like, that's okay. Like, it's okay to look at an NHL goalie and say like, I can do this better than him. Or I think that's part of the belief. And I hope people can look at my game and say the same thing, because that's the beauty of it. There's always things you can get better, and you have to make trade-offs in your game too. To be good at one thing, you maybe have to give up something else. So I just think it's so cool to watch all these guys do their thing and pick up things.
Isn't that the best part of the position? Like there's no one way to do this.
Oh yeah, it's so cool. And I used to be in a little bit of a tunnel in my mindset, just thinking like my way is the best way. But over time, it's just so clear that you can do it a million different ways and still get results.
Do you watch, like, I've talked to other guys, like, you know, clearly, like you said, like size was probably one of the reasons you didn't have offers last year. There is sort of this bias towards, I've always said, you know, and actually, you know, I don't know if you've heard the Ian Clark podcast with us, but it was him that talked about if there's a perfect size, if there's an ideal, then guys that are bigger have challenges too, like bigger holes and movement and stuff like that. And same as guys that are 2 inches smaller than the ideal. They all have challenges. The difference is the guys at the big side of that scale get every opportunity, and the ones at the other end quite often don't. Do you watch guys like Saros? Like, do you watch him even more closely than anyone else? Just because of I think there's a lot of us that are watching UC Saros right now and just enjoying the success he's having.
Yeah, I definitely watch him a lot. And I agree with that. Obviously, I'm biased because I'm on the shorter side of things, but I definitely think bigger goalies can maybe get away with a little bit more. But I don't think you can look at it that simply too, because like I was saying, when I was younger, when I was growing my game in such important years in my life, I was smaller. And so I had to learn these skills like patience and positioning and efficiency in my movement. So where maybe bigger guys wouldn't learn that. And I think that's where the draft has had some issues is guys are so young when they get drafted, they look at the bigger guys and the guys that have that quote unquote goalie body, but maybe they're not putting in as much into their game, into those little things because they don't have to, because they feel like they can get away with more at a young age. And I think over time, there's a real advantage in being smaller in that way. I think a lot of smaller goalies just have to be better. Obviously, it's not like that in every situation, but that's also how I look at it a bit too. So, yeah, at the end of the day, if you can stop the puck, you can stop the puck. I don't think it really matters how tall you are. Obviously, there isn't emphasis on that these days, but I don't necessarily agree with it too much.
Now, was it something that you faced? You mentioned a growth spurt earlier on, because this path, as much as even Michigan, like the success you had at Michigan, I talked about the captaincy and back-to-back 930 plus save percentage years, your last 2 seasons there. Like, you didn't arrive at Michigan with a full ride. Like, you had a partial scholarship. Rewinding it back further to like high school, my understanding is back up in your junior year. Didn't get a chance to play till your senior year. 2 parts to this. Why do you think that was? Like, are there elements? Because I've always wondered about this, especially at the lower levels, but it exists right up to the NHL. There are things you do and ways you move that are so efficient. And I think sometimes the evaluators of goaltending look for busy and athletic, and really it's just a lot of wasted movement. Was that part of the challenge for you in terms of knowing or believing that you could play at certain levels and not getting a chance because other people couldn't see that stuff? Or do you think it was more just about size?
I'd say a little bit of both. Yeah, I definitely agree. I think people are always looking for this wow factor, and maybe that's starting to change as well. Maybe that's why there's a couple smaller goalies in the league now too, because teams are investing more in their goalie department and their goalie scouting. So I think goalies, for the most part, understand that stuff. If you're not a goalie, yeah, you probably look for the wow factor, guys who can do the splits, the 6'5" guys who are reaching for every puck and maybe come up with huge glove saves, which to me, like a lot of those, my game is, just making hard saves look easy. And I think sometimes people don't appreciate that as much because they don't see the 5 passes you had beaten before the shot was taken. They just see the shot that was taken. But at the end of the day, I think as much as I myself try and not focus on numbers and try and honestly not look at them, I think the numbers kind of speak, and that's why I think I've had some success. Is just I've had to show that every year in my performance, where maybe other guys can get away with having a subpar year and they still get that benefit of the doubt.
Were there moment? Was it frustrating at times? Like, it had to be, especially as a younger guy, to not get some of the opportunities that you maybe felt you were good enough to handle.
Oh, for sure. I think that's one of the sometimes concerns I have with sitting on a podcast like this and talking about all the things I did. It makes it seem like I'm here and it was always bound to happen because I believed in myself and all this. And while I did believe in myself long term, it was hard. Like, there were times where I decided or thought about just going Division 3, and there were times where I felt like I didn't have a shot at making it to the NHL for sure. But I think there were enough people that believed in me, like Valley and other people, and that I was able to believe in myself. And I think going back to the beginning of just the preparation that goes into everything. I was always able to gain confidence off my preparation, because I think a lot of people's confidence can be ego driven. Like, I'm the best in the world. Like, just saying these things to themselves. But that's not really me. And for me, I was always able to gain confidence from, I can do that better than this guy, or I can do this move really well, or I played against this great team with these great players, and I was able to hold my own, and just really feeling like slowly I was able to gain confidence from that. But yeah, there were doubts, and there's always going to be doubts. I think it's just about having the tools to deal with those. And like I said, reminding yourself that hockey isn't life. And at the end of the day, if you fail, it's not about whether you make it or not. It's about how you grow in the process. So you really can't lose in that sense.
So that's, I mean, when we talk about belief and maintaining that sense of belief, that it's all anchored in that philosophy, even in those moments where there are doubts and frustrations. Because I wasn't sure how to phrase that, because I know I don't think we want to just present it. I didn't want to just present it like this was this easy path for you because you just kept grinding. There had to be challenges. And I was hoping, like you said, the way you overcame them could be a lesson to other young goalies who might be facing the same thing right now, where they feel like, hey, I'm ready for this opportunity. I know I'm ready for this opportunity, but I can't get it yet. Why? How you work your way through those challenges and frustrations, and that belief sounds like for you really does come all back to that preparation.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the big thing is just looking at everything as an opportunity. And I wish I could have seen this even a little bit more at a younger age, when I was in high school and a backup in junior year, or not even really on the varsity team my first 2 years. Just seeing it as an opportunity, because it was a huge opportunity to work on my game. And while I wasn't playing all the games, it really forced me to do a lot more goalie sessions with Valley, or work on my game and practice a lot more. And I think that's just paid off so much in the long term of my game. I think some guys, when they play a lot of games at a young age, you don't get much better in games. You get better from reflecting on your games. And I was able to really just have like goalie sessions every day for 3 years while I wasn't playing. And so then when I did get my opportunity, I felt like I was that much more prepared and that much better. But again, if I didn't have that mindset of getting better every day, then that doesn't happen. So it's all about how you look at things, glass half full or glass half empty. And that's life, and that's hockey.
You've talked about mindset. You've said growth mindset a bunch of times, and I think we all like it. It can almost become a catchphrase-ish type thing where we all think we know what it means. But I understand that you're looking at actually. I talk about how we can help other kids that listen to this, but you're looking at actually. You guys are starting a business with somebody from, I believe, from Michigan. Like, walk me through what growth mindset means to you and how you hope to maybe help other people find that through what you guys have cooking here, and we'll be able to find out. I know it's not live yet, but I wanted to find out more about it when you mentioned it.
Yeah, so it's actually a company. I'm going to start with my teammate from Skellefteå, that he's an American. They're American on my team, but from the second we got there, we just had a great connection, and he's going to be a friend for a lifetime. I already know that, and it was just a great year to grow from him. He's a defenseman, but we both kind of, in different ways at different points in our career, had a realization of that thing, the growth mindset, and how valuable that is, how much that can do for your game in the long term. And for me, it was in high school when I needed it to be. And for him, it was after a little bit of a tough stretch in pro, where he had played a couple NHL games and then gotten sent down all the way to the coast. And now he's in the process of trying to get back to the NHL, and he had a great year for us this year. He was one of our best defensemen. And yeah, I mean, for us, it's all about just that flip of the switch of your mind going all in and just wanting to get better. And I've said it a bunch in this podcast, but it's not even necessarily about hockey itself. It's about life and growing, and hockey can do that for you. But for us, we just know the power of when you go all in, when you commit to those competitive advantages, to those inches and the daily grind, you get so much better over time. And it's a pretty fulfilling life to live too. There's a lot of purpose in it. And we just want to teach kids to do that, high school kids, to be able to commit to their craft and really go for their goals without any fear, because there's a lot of people in life that want to hold you back and tell you can't do it, or tell you just go do this, take this job, or go to this college instead. But life's too short to not go for your dreams and really go all out for it. So we're just trying to give back a little bit and teach that lesson. And I mean, the big phrase that we keep coming back to is if you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. If you teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. And that's kind of one of our mottos is teaching people how to fish, like how to commit to the process, not necessarily what exactly to do. Like for me, it was my diet that really sparked a big change in me and pushed me to have this discipline in my life and in multiple areas. But for other people, it could be something completely different. But I think the one thing that everyone can share is just that mindset to get better and to grow. And that's something you can't replicate.
It seems like an easy concept on some level, right? Oh, just always look for opportunities to growth mindset. But are there tools and ways to approach it that you've learned over the years that help sort of foster it or encourage it so that it does become a daily part of life, as opposed to just this sort of phrase, or like to really truly adopt it? Are there ways that I guess they'd be different for everyone, but ways to sort of help people get to that sort of approach?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of different ways, and reflection is huge. I think journaling and reflection is just massive in terms of growing from your everyday. I do it every morning, every night, just to reflect. And if you're not really becoming conscious of what you're doing and your behaviors and your habits, it's hard to change or to grow and to be purposeful in how you're doing things. So I think that's huge, and that's a big emphasis on our program is habit formation and identifying your habits and learning to step in and change them. And then in general, like our kind of three pillars, the 3 C's we're using are commitment, curiosity, and connection. And I think that speaks a lot to what you're asking about is commitment to the process, and that curiosity we've also been talking about a lot of just asking the right questions and seeking out the right people, and then the connection. And that, I think, Caps and our relationship has shown that a bit. Just when you find people in your life that see things the same way and have that growth mindset, you start to push each other. And I think there's a real room for a community for like-minded people like us who really want to get better. And I know there's a lot of young kids that want to do that, but just don't feel like they belong in that sense. Because I can relate that a lot of people, like we were talking about before, kind of make fun of you when you're doing your blue light glasses or eating your weird food. And I think if there's a little bit more of a community for that, it becomes a lot easier for people to really commit and have that mindset where they just want to get better and do whatever it takes to do that.
Okay, you talked about the food. I don't want to focus on it too much because I think, like I said, it's just another stone that you turn over, right? Another way that you've found to help you be the best you, both personally and as a goalie. But where did the focus come from on the paleo diet? How strict is and I guess for others, they kind of like goaltending, right? Like we know nutrition is important. Doesn't mean that everyone has to commit to a paleo diet, but having that focus in terms of you have reasons you do that. Other people, my wife and daughter are full out 100% vegans. And when I eat what they're preparing, I feel better about everything. You know what I mean? Like as soon as I start, when I'm at the rink and away from the family and start sneaking snacks that have processed sugar and stuff, I can feel my energy. So I know this stuff works. What for you? Why is it important for you? Is it a part of the routine? Is it just how you feel? How'd you get into that side of things?
Yeah, I mean, so I got into it because the gym I still go to this day in the summers, Prentice, which is near my house in Connecticut. It's they're big on this diet and have a lot of their pros do it, and it's been really helpful to them. But I actually heard about the diet before I even heard about the gym, really, and it happened to be at that exact time where I kind of flipped a switch from in my mindset, especially working with Valley, and And for me, that became the thing that I latched onto and just really went all in on. And it became so valuable for me personally because I wasn't always in the best shape growing up. And Valley would talk to me about that. Like, you need to be in good shape to play this position. It's to be at your best. And so I was really looking for things, and that just became the thing for me. And I just really went all in on diet. I'm still all in on it today, maybe a little bit more willing to go outside of it at times. But it just became a huge thing for me. And I just saw all these different areas of my life after that start to change too. I read this book called The Power of Habit while we're talking about habits and everything. And for me, it was a keystone habit is what the book talks about. Just something that you change, one habit that then sparks all this other change in your life. And that ended up being it for me. And it's not going to be that for everyone. It's definitely dependent on your situation, but I've just really always loved that. And also grown an interest in it over the years in nutrition and how the body works. And it's just something that maybe I'll ease up on as time goes in terms of how strict I am, but it's always probably going to be a staple to my life just because of more so what it represents to me and that change in my life.
Love it. Now, Prentice, I knew I'd heard of that. I'm like, I've heard other guys reference this. Like, that's a who's who of hockey training out there. Do you? There's a few goalies that I know. Like, I'm pretty sure Thatch is one of the guys that at some point he's been out that way. I know he's moved now to he's back in San Diego. But Demmer, Quickie, like, so did you ever have any sort of with these guys where you picked up things, or have you ever had a chance to train with any of these guys on or off the ice?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely grown up like seeing Quickie in the gym and Demko a bit. He was there, I think, a couple summers ago. And it was just cool to watch those guys. And I mean, you're so separated from these athletes growing up. You see them as idols, not people, and like they're not even real. And then you walk into a gym when you're in high school and there's Chris Kreider or Cam Atkinson or Pacioretty or Jonathan Quick, and then you see the workouts they're doing, and you're like, oh, we're kind of doing something similar. Maybe it kind of bridges that gap a bit in terms of another factor that helps you believe in yourself a little bit more and making your dreams a little bit less scary of a destination to get to. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I got to pick their brains a lot and all. I work out with Spencer Knight now, like not with him, but usually around the same time. So he's another guy that obviously closer to my age and he's been having a lot of success. He's a special talent. And yeah, just being around a lot of those guys, it's a cool culture. And yeah, just getting back to the connection part I was just talking about, that's probably one of the only places I've been where there's a real community for getting better and caring about your body, and where other places guys joke around and mess with you when you're eating healthy or whatever. Like there, it was the norm, and it took a lot of, or I should say, a lot of the wasted mental energy that can come with all those judgments isn't there. So that's definitely a cool place to be, and I would definitely recommend it to any younger hockey players looking to get better.
And now I remember where I first heard it was probably in our talks with Spencer heading into the draft. And yeah, now I know where it jumps out to mind. And that doesn't surprise me, right? Because that's a place full of other guys on the same path and committed to it at that level, that would be a place where judgment of those types of things would not be passed, because they all see the benefit, maybe not in the exact diet you choose, but in the dedication to getting better.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so I wanted to ask a little bit about your work with Valley and tie it into, like, you guys started working at 13. I haven't even asked you what you see as your foundation as a goaltender. We've talked about all these different things, like from a style standpoint or how you play the position, and whether there's keys that anchor you. You know, if some guys will write them in a blocker, like things that you identify as your staples, and tie that into your path. Because, you know, like you said, it wasn't until 18 where you sort of get that opportunity in high school, finally get to start as a senior. You pop there, under 18 national championship with Mid Fairfield, and then into even the USHL starts with a walk-on opportunity. So how did your game evolve through those years? What's the foundation of it? And how did that play a role in finally getting some of these opportunities and making the most of them?
Yeah, I think the foundation that I just learned from Valley, it sounds simple, but it's kind of just stopping the puck. Like, I think there's a lot of information out there and a lot of different skating drills or this and that where guys are making it seem like this is the next thing to get you to the next level. But I'm really grateful for being able to work with Valley because it was pretty simple at the beginning, especially. Let's put a puck right here. Let's put a camera right behind it and let's see how big you are in the net. And that really just like totally changed my mindset. I was a small guy. When I started working with him, I don't know how tall I was, maybe 5'5" at the tallest. And like just seeing as a 5'5" guy, you put a puck on the dot, and if I do everything right, you can't beat me. Like, and you start. I remember we had Calvin DeHaan, who's obviously in the NHL now. He was in Bridgeport at the time. He shot at me in that first year I was working with Valley, maybe a couple sessions in, and we were just doing some of those drills and putting pucks in certain areas and having them shoot, and seeing that puck's perspective and knowing that a guy like that couldn't beat me even when I was 14 and he was a pro hockey player. It just built a lot of confidence, and I really started to see the game that way in the puck's perspective and really playing to my positioning. I guess it's defined as box control, but yeah, that was the biggest key for me. And then from there, all Valley stuff in terms of tracking, and we started to implement the double shuffle a little bit. I keep seeing that today as a thing where guys are switching from the T-push to the double shuffle, but it's kind of funny because that's something it felt like inventing when I was 14, 15, 16, and that became a big staple to my game. And yeah, and then obviously like just watching Henrik Lundqvist, I think for me a big staple was always my compete level. And I always took a lot of pride in that, just being able to outcompete players and other goalies. And I think that can and can't be taught. It can be taught because you can teach a young kid to get that spark and change their mindset, but it also isn't a technical thing. It's a flip of the switch. It's a mindset. It's getting rid of holding back your fears a bit and just kind of going all in.
Now, that puck perspective, box control, we've heard it, like how to close the box, like how to go to the ice without opening the holes when we figure out that small net in front of us is all we got to worry about, not the big one behind us. What was that process like for you? Sounds like it was pretty eye-opening to realize how much smaller the space you had to cover was than that 6x4 behind us can sometimes feel.
Yeah, that was huge. And I think the key for me was that was at the beginning of my career. Like I said, like these other things are so valuable, like game reads and skating and footwork and just everything that goes into the position. You could spend 100 years playing this position and never run out of things to look at. But just starting at that foundation and seeing how, in a way, the game's so complicated, but it's also so simple, was so great for me. And then since then, and especially as I started to play more games since my senior year of high school through now, then there's all these other things you can look at in terms of game reads and reading the power plays and maybe squareness and depth and all this stuff, which we looked at a good amount at the beginning. But without that foundation, without that core ability to just stop the puck, if you know all you have to do is stop the puck and there's no pass threat, it's just a guy from this spot, that just went a long way for me.
If you're in position, you're set and you're square, you've done all the work. It's a matter of getting there ahead of everything these days that can become more and more challenging as the game gets so dynamic in east-west and fast.
Exactly. It's kind of like working backwards. Like if you're reflecting on a goal, there's all these things that go into it. But if you don't have that first thing checked off that you can stop the puck from that spot, it's none of the other stuff even matters. It's not even worth talking about how you got there. The save selection for me was always number one.
So Steve actually credits you for helping him start his statistics company, Clearsight Analytics. I wasn't sure. I'm not sure. He must have told you this story, but he told me that.
He's never told me that.
Well, there you go. Maybe you need to take a percentage here because. So I guess it was a drill that he used to do where it was walkouts along the goal line, and late in his career, he liked to do that at the end of practice. And you guys were doing the drill, so just walkouts across the goal line around the front of the net. And he told me that you said to him, like it's a great drill and it's fun and all, but I feel like this never happens. And you kind of blew his mind a little bit. And he's like, geez, like light bulb moment is what he called it. How do I know what does and doesn't happen on the ice if I'm not tracking it? And that was part of his process of going back and sort of feeling like he needed to track every play to know what we should be working on as goalies. So there you go.
Yeah. I mean, now he kind of turned on us, though. Now he's teaching teams how to score on the goalies. But yeah, maybe I do remember that. I think it's valuable. Like, even before he started his business, the way he would break up the ice in our goalie practices, and he still does to this day with his dead angle zone funnel. He literally draws the lines on the ice, and that was just huge in terms of making the game a little bit more realistic and the practices realistic. I think so many coaches design the in-season practices where guys are just coming with a full head of steam and ripping pucks from wherever. I mean, even if it's in the funnel, it's with the ability to drag one way or the other, go into the slot. And it's just, I think it causes a lot of bad habits, but especially in the North American game, there's not a lot of time and space, and making things a little bit more realistic in practice can go a long way. Cause like I said, it's all about the preparation and those habits. So you can just let go in a game and play. But if you don't build those habits and prepare the right way, it's pretty hard to trust your game come game time. And that's at least my thoughts on that.
Okay, I got one last one because I'm way over the time here. We're going to set a record, but I've enjoyed this conversation so much, Strauss. Video, because you mentioned it and you talked about, like you said, like you can do video behind a puck and know how much space you take up. But the other element beyond technique and beyond everything is the ability to anticipate, to read. Like tracking helps, but obviously the ability to sort of process and read and figure out the patterns of the game. For you, is video played a big role in that? How do you go about, I guess is the question, because you mentioned reads a few times. How do you go about getting better at reads, especially maybe in your high school years before your senior year where you weren't playing that much? How did you get better at reading the game without maybe getting to play it as often as you wanted?
Yeah, it's something I've grown a lot, like you just said, since I've started to play a lot more games. Like, as much as like I have talked about, the preparation's huge. It is hard to fully emulate a game, and that's a huge part of playing and getting better. But I think if you're not looking at the video, you're missing a huge opportunity. An NHL scout actually in the past couple of years said something to me like, we want every goalie to play about 200 professional or games at a high level before they make that full jump to the NHL. And while I kind of agreed and thought there was value in that, I was kind of like, I don't necessarily know if I agree, because on the one hand, there can be a goalie that plays 200 games, doesn't look at their video, just goes through the motions, goes to practice the next day and just keeps going. Well, on the other hand, another goalie could watch a video once after the game, once again with a goalie coach, twice more in the summer, and learn from it 4 different times. And that's a completely different goalie. One guy is taking everything away from that game, and one guy is just playing the game mindlessly and not reflecting. So without the reflection piece, I think you're missing a lot of opportunities. And it's just such a unique thing that we have in today's world, to be able to look at ourselves from a third-party view. And notice these little things, and whether in a game or practice, like the goal is to play free. You want to play in the flow state and not be thinking, but you can't do that and reflect at the same time. So I think it's so valuable to be able to let go into the game, play, and then afterwards come back to it and be like, where did this weird thing I did come from? Like, should I keep this? Should I change this? And then you can go back to practice the next day and play with it a little bit and maybe work on it. And I think that's where the long-term growth really comes from.
And that way, by the time you get back to the next game, you're not thinking about it. It's become a little more instinctual. You're not overthinking. You talked about overthinking earlier.
Yeah, exactly. And there have been coaches who have been really worried about me in the past in terms of how deeply I think about the game and not being able to let go of that. But something I tried to explain and I think I ended up just showing is like I overthink every situation so that in the game I can just let go. And that is a hard thing to do. You have to build the tools to be able to let go because, like we said, you do everything how you do everything. So it's a fine line. But for me, there was so much comfort in looking at a situation a million times, thinking about it, so that when I got in the game, I trusted it's my game and my solution so well that I knew I didn't need to go out there and think, that I could just trust my game and go numb and just play. And that's been a huge staple for me, especially the last 4 or 5 years.
Well, I can't wait. I think it's you didn't mention his name, but you mentioned his nickname. Michael Kapla, I'm guessing, is your partner in the business.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I can't wait to see what you guys. We'll have to touch back in or make sure we promote it. We'll let our audience know when you guys are ready to launch. But website based, I'd imagine, for starters, or at least there'll be a website, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, there'll be a website, and stay tuned. We're looking to launch a mentorship program this summer is kind of the start to it. So any young hockey players out there looking to get better, and if anything I said over this podcast spoke to you a lot, stay tuned for that, and it'd be great to have a lot of you guys on.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to promote that because I'm pretty sure that a lot of what you said today spoke to a lot of different young goalies and probably a lot of parents that, you know, even if the goalie's not self-aware yet, they can probably see their young goalie going through that themselves right now. So, Strauss, man, this has been a real pleasure, a real enjoyable conversation that I know our audience is going to love. So I can't thank you enough for spending so much time with me. I know I'm a little annoying with the questions, and we went over time, but it's what I do, and your answers were just so engaging, I couldn't stop. So thanks, man.
No, thank you. This was awesome. This is what I live for. I love talking about this stuff, and like I said, the goaltending position's a special thing, and it just helps you grow in so many different ways. So to share a little bit of my journey and my experiences it's a real pleasure for me, and I appreciate it.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to catching up with you. We have an American Hockey League team here now in town up in Vancouver, which means I will see you as soon as next year in person. And geez, after this interview and talking to Valley earlier, I might have to come out to Connecticut this summer just to watch you guys train.
That'd be great. Love to have you out.
I absolutely love that interview. I love when guys dive deep into all the things they're doing. And you just got to realize that if you've got the dream of playing at that level, there's guys like Strauss Mann, Devin Levi, Thatcher Demko, you know, all the people we've spoken to on here who leave no stone unturned. That's what you're up against. Strauss Mann, thank you for being an InGoal listener and for knowing about the one more question, and still picking up the phone and sharing all of that with us. He knew he was in for a good 45 minutes to an hour, and Strauss hung in there for probably, an hour and 15, Woody? That was awesome.
Hey, listen, and after we hung up, him and I talked for a good 40 minutes afterwards. He's coming over to North America Pro, was asking questions about what guys are wearing, chest protectors, and looking for some advice, and just not advice, but what am I seeing around the league in terms of trends, and because that's all going to be new to him, right? Like we were talking earlier about gear getting approved by Kay Whitmore, like all his gear is now going to have to be approved. What's that process like? So just, I loved that interview. I was going to say me and him could have talked for another hour, and we actually almost did, damn it. And I'm not kidding, Hutch. We have to find a way to get to Connecticut to be on the ice with him, Steve Valiquette this summer. The invitation's open, and I just figure watching those two run drills and then being able to talk through them after might be the stuff that InGoalMag.com segments are made of.
Think we got to load up the InGoal motorhome and just start crisscrossing North America for the summer.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that'll go over on the home front if I'm gone all summer, but
she'd probably be thrilled to have you out of there. You act like she'd be upset if you're away. I know the CFO would love the house to be empty.
Yeah, you're probably right. A little less me is probably better for everyone.
I don't know. We got an email this week asking what the travel schedule was for the summer, so I'm pretty sure she's just planning the parties. Listen, over at InGoal, we got some more drills and we got some more stuff from our good friend Pete Fry. I really like Pete's article, Woody, this week. It's about when will I get my break, and there's so many goalies and parents around. I've talked to them in the stands, just waiting for their opportunity. And they see other goalies having cool opportunities, whether it's being asked to play for the right team or winning a big tournament or getting drafted or whatever. And they wonder, when's that going to happen for me? And Pete talks about that this week in a way that only he can. So really enjoyed that article and everything Pete does for us. Woody, I was wondering, like, was there a big break for you?
when the beer league team I currently play on didn't have a goaltender and invited me out, and I managed to stick with them, and 14 years later I'm now traveling with them and they're some of my best friends. That would be my big break. Was the other guy.
You probably earned it though, right? Like you were ready for it. It didn't just fall out of the sky.
No, I think the other guy probably just couldn't play anymore because we're all getting old. No, of course I earned it, Hutch. Of course it didn't fall out of the sky.
You earn your breaks. That's what he told us. Okay, you're my big break, Woody. But I earned it because InGoal was going for however long it was going, and I got it up and running, and I made it something appealing. And then the phone rang, and there's Woody, and that was the big break because we wouldn't be here now if he hadn't given me a phone call. So there's my big break. But I think I had to make it for myself too.
My big break was probably phoning you and joining InGoal magazine.
Oh, Woody, we should be hugging if we weren't on Zoom.
I know, but then Darren will get jealous and he'll want to come back too soon, and we want him to rest up.
There you go. What else we got going over at InGoal? Tell us more about the drill series.
Seamus Kotick's drill series with the Buffalo Sabres. Of course, he's the goalie development coach. He's got Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, another series of drills. And it's just a new variation on the 5-puck series. Just another good example, a chance to watch some short clips of an NHL goaltender in the league this year and bound to be there permanently in the near future. Going through some pretty basic skating movements. But again, just another example of how you can take that 5-puck principle that was introduced by Seamus to us and by goaltending coach legend Warren Strelo, may he rest in peace, to Seamus when he was with the San Jose Sharks as a young pro. And just, again, another example of how you can take something so simple and work it into movement, whether it's to, as he said, dealer's choice for the goalies. If there's something they want to work on that they feel is deficient, you can do these movements on your skates. You can do these movements. You can go into your post in an RVH. Like, you can mix these up. And this is just another iteration of the 5 pucks, just working one side at a time. Find strength, whether it's working on your strengths or working on your weaknesses. There are simple ways to do it. And this, again, just another example. And to me, the best part of this series with Seamus is all these drills he's showing us. They are basic, but we're seeing an NHL-bound goaltender. They use this every day, whether it's part of their warm-ups or work to get them faster and better with their movements. They use these things for at least 3 to 4 minutes a day. These different types of movement patterns. So right up to the National Hockey League. But it's also just as applicable for a 9 or 10-year-old, into junior, beer leaguer. Not that any of us ever get a chance to work on drills and practice, but if you do, this is a really good movement pattern series. We've heard it so many times, whether it's Carey Price, Carter Hart, the best in the game, the best in the National Hockey League, the best in the world. Movement is everything. Crease movement patterns. I know all the young goalies, they want pucks, they want shots, they want dynamic drills that they've seen on Instagram with people flying all over the place. But the reality is your foundation is your movement. And just another great example from Seamus Kotick that you can watch. You can listen to Seamus talk over the video and explain some of the keys. And if you're an InGoal magazine premium annual subscriber, you can still go right back to the first series, which had multiple drills in it, multiple variations, and watch all the way through to part 4 this week that came out. And also, don't forget, Pro Reads went live this week, another new one this week. I think we had Eric Comrie again this week. We've got more coming up. Every Monday, we'll have a new Pro Reads up for you. So that's our weekly staple there, and we look to add to more of those in the week ahead.
There you go. So head over to ingoalmag.com, and if you're not a subscriber yet, we'd love to have you join us over there, or you could purchase one for the favorite goalie or coach in your life through the gift memberships. Woody, speaking of 5 pucks, it's a beautiful day outside, and outside that beautiful suburban home of yours, there's a 5x5 strip of lawn that isn't going to mow itself, so I think we'd better sign off here. Wishing everybody a beautiful week, and go out there and make your big break as we wish our good friend Darren Millard a healthy and speedy recovery. He's Woody. I'm Hutch. Thanks for joining us on the InGoal Radio podcast presented by The Hockey Shop, source for sports and thehockeyshop.com.